Colonel Rob Maness has a lifelong record of providing dedicated service to this nation. Having worked his way up from the enlisted ranks to full colonel, he served our country for more than 32 years. He has served as a bomber squadron commander, bomb disposal technician, Joint Chiefs of Staff Operations Officer, assisted the National Security Team with the campaign plan for the global war on terrorism. He authored the first theater nuclear war plan and served as the Vice Commander of America's largest airborne intelligence wing. Colonel Rob Maness is a true American hero. This is Rob Maness Live.
The rift between Benjamin Netanyahu and President Biden is growing this morning, 1 month, exactly 1 month out from the Israeli Prime Minister's address to Congress. Netanyahu telling his cabinet he's seen, quote, a dramatic drop in weapons deliveries from the United States, suggesting Israel could broaden its fighting in the Middle East, going after Hezbollah in Lebanon after the war in Gaza is over. News Nation's Tom Dempsey is on our nation's capital. Good morning, Tom. The Prime Minister doubling down on the claim that the U.S. is withholding weapons from Israel.
Hey, good morning, Hannah. Yeah, this tension between President Joe Biden and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu only seems to be growing worse. Just over the weekend, Netanyahu telling his cabinet that he's seen a, quote, dramatic drop in the number of weapons that the United States has provided Israel during its ongoing war with Gaza. Keep in mind, this comes just days after we were here last week talking about Netanyahu's claims about the United States allegedly withholding aid from Israel. So again, these types of comments really not sitting well with President Joe Biden's team. In fact, the press secretary just last week saying that she was very confused about why Netanyahu would say all this. When contacted by News Nation on Sunday, the president's team saying that it would not keep responding to these statements from Netanyahu. But again, these recent comments likely not very sitting well with President Joe Biden's team, Hannah.
And Tom, the timing is very interesting because all of this comes as Israel's defense minister is in Washington for a key meeting with our lawmakers. What do we know about that?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, some big meetings happening this week in the nation's capital with the Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant. We know he's going to be meeting with Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin. Two particular things on the agenda to talk about this week. Obviously, the ongoing war with Hamas. President Joe Biden's team has really pushed for any sort of progress with a ceasefire deal and to release hostages. But both Hamas and Israel seem to show a little bit of reluctance to that plan. But also at the very top of this agenda is possible more fighting with Hezbollah in Lebanon. There continue to be all sorts of skirmishes at the border between Israel and Lebanon. And just over the weekend, Prime Minister Netanyahu saying that he expects intense fighting with Hamas to start winding down in the next few weeks and months ahead. And as soon as that happens and Hamas loses control of the area, he believes they'll focus more troops to fight Hezbollah in Lebanon. So again, there's some deep concerns about this war potentially widening even more in the Middle East. Just over the weekend, the defense minister posting to social media, calling these meetings crucial between the two sides and saying, quote, the United States is our main ally and the deep ties between the countries are more important than ever. So these meetings happening this week in Washington, D.C. And like I said, the ongoing conflicts with Hamas and Hezbollah expected to be at the top of the agenda, Hannah.
A busy week. I know you'll stay on top of it. Thank you in Washington, D.C.
So the Middle East war may be shifting focus to Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. Welcome to More War Mondays. The Rob Maness Show is live on Worldview Tube and our X Spaces simulcast. And we are looking forward to our guest today. Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu, as you just heard, he continues to claim the United States is withholding weapons shipments while Defense Minister Gallant's visiting the D.C. Capitol for high-level meetings with Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin and the senior American defense team. Both Israeli leaders are indicating that the Gaza war operations may be winding down soon. And guess what? Hezbollah is in their sights because the strategic focus of the war is shifting in that direction. And just a reminder, Hezbollah has been attacking Israel every day since October 7th of last year. And the attacks are on the increase in the country. And Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah, is threatening to attack Cyprus, an EU country, and an Israeli nuclear facility in a recent video which is very, very interesting. And meanwhile, here in America, a move sure to anger most Americans. I know it does me. Charges are being dropped against pro-Hamas protesters from Columbia University. Well, Aaron Lavarco of Light to the Nations Ministry joins me today to discuss the latest news on Israel's fight for survival. Aaron lives in Israel and has served in the Israeli Defense Forces and reports the news for Worldview Tube from that area. Aaron, welcome to the Rob Maness Show for the first time, sir.
Colonel Rob, it is an honor to be with you. Great to see you, sir. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for coming on. I know it's a big time difference, but I've been wanting to get you on the show for a while. Hopefully someday More War Monday will go away and we can get to something a little crazy like Manic Mondays or something, because I hate war just as much as you probably do. But first, since it's your first appearance on the show, I wanted to give you a chance to talk about the organization, the Light to the Nations Ministry, and a little bit about your background.
Well, thank you. Yeah, so I am originally from a place called New Zealand, and I immigrated to Israel about 32 years ago. For the last 17 years, I've been an Israeli tour guide, guiding probably about 90% of the tourists that I guide from the United States. But of course, a few years ago when COVID hit, tourism died. So I ended up starting a ministry called Light to the Nations Ministry. It's a ministry that basically deals with, it's a teaching ministry where I teach from a biblical perspective. My real passion, I like to help people who read the Bible actually understand how to read the Bible. A lot of people read it through Western eyes, and I try to focus on the historical, cultural, social background of the Bible. I've learned that as a tour guide, as I travel around all the sites here in Israel, the archaeology, the history, the geography, the geology. So I like to bring that out when I teach from the Bible. So I do that. I have a weekly Bible study where I teach the 5 books of Moses called the Torah. We do it in an annual cycle. If anyone is interested, you can see my website and you can join in. It's a free Bible study. We're in the book of Numbers right now. We also have a prayer ministry, praying for the peace of Jerusalem, for Israel, and also just helping with practical needs here, especially now. You know, after COVID, things went back to normal a little bit for about a year and a half. But then, of course, October the 7th hit us. And once again, tourism was hit. So I'm back to focusing on the teaching, focusing on what I'm doing here, reporting, doing reporting pretty much every night. And that's a little bit about me. I'm actually coming to the United States in a few days in about a week, for 2 months. I'll be doing a lot of speaking in a number of churches. And if anyone's interested in knowing my itinerary, they can write me. There's my email. But then I'll be coming back to America late October, November, and I look forward to meeting you in person at a conference there.
Yes, absolutely. We'll be at Brandon House's annual conference in early November. I look forward to meeting you too, and I'll have to get your schedule for the church visits too. I mean, in case you're coming close to here. You know, my wife and I, we're both, I'm a Southern Baptist and she was raised a Nazarene, both Christians, obviously, but in her research, we now have a Jewish calendar on our refrigerator because she came to me a few months ago and said, hey, you know, something I've learned in my study is that we need to understand more about Jewish celebrations and those kind of things and how they're talked about in the Bible, and give us a deeper understanding of the New Testament and our Christianity itself. So I appreciate what you do, man. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. And, you know, I'm so glad to hear you say that you and your wife are interested in the feasts of the Lord. I always say that the church has been robbed excuse the pun on your name, but the church has been robbed from these feasts. Why does the church not celebrate these feasts? I do not know, number one. And number two, it's also interesting to hear you talking about the calendar, because actually, if you look at the Gregorian calendar, the calendar that we use in the West, it's totally out of sync. It was the Romans that changed the calendar. For example, October is actually from the word octo, which means 8. Well, October is the number 8, but it's the 10th month. Yeah. So it's totally out of sync. November, nov, means 9, and it's the 11th month. December, D, from the word deca, where we get the word the 10 commandments, that's the 12th month. So a lot of these pagan Roman influences and Greek influences have come in, and sadly it's a bit out of sync, but that's part of my ministry too, restoring the Hebraic Jewish roots of the Christian faith. And I'm glad to know that you're a Baptist. Actually, it was a Baptist that led me to the Lord about 7, 8 years ago. And, I always joke when I have tourists, when I take them down to the Jordan River, the very southern part of the Jordan River, and I say this is where John the Baptist baptized, in the southern part of the Jordan River. So I always joke and say, John the Baptist, he was the first Southern Baptist because he baptized at the southern part of the Jordan River.
That's good to know. I'll be able to use that now. As a matter of fact,
Yes.
and considering I'm a Southerner in the United States, that's even more important to me because as the rest of America knows, we love our Southern heritage here, much to the angst of the leftist Marxists that now occupy a lot of the halls of power in this country, as a matter of fact. Well, well, Aaron, that was really good. I like it. But I started the show, obviously, with Netanyahu talking about the Biden administration basically shorting Israel on weapons. And I just wanted to get your take on that. Obviously, you live there. And I've been watching Benjamin Netanyahu for a very, very long time, both in and out of office. He doesn't, I mean, he's a politician, obviously, but he doesn't mess around with national security as much as an American politician would. So it surprises me that he's talking about this so openly, and we're getting denials out of the Biden administration. What's really going on?
Well, firstly, let me start with positive by saying we are very thankful to the United States, to President Biden, for what they have provided for us. They sent battleships straight after October the 7th into the Persian Gulf. They actually are sending one on their way right now. The President Ford battleship. So there has been a mass amount of aid and support, and America has always been our number one ally. But like all friendships, relationships, with your best friend, with your wife, with your kids, sometimes there are clashes. It's not the first time our leaders have had clashes with American leaders. Sadly, during a time of war, it's not the good time. It's really sending the wrong message to our enemies. When our enemies, when hyenas smell blood, they come by the masses, and this is not good. And we're quite upset now. There's all kind of speculation. Why is Joe Biden? Why is the Foreign Ministry of the United States? Why are they doing this? Why are they holding back weapons? And a lot of people say it's because President Biden is thinking of November. He's thinking of people in the Democratic Party who are pro-Hamas, who are pro-Iranian. We know that Joe Biden has been sending billions and billions of dollars to the Iranians. And yet at the same time, they're burning American flags, Israeli flags, calling out you as the big Satan, we as the little Satan. and this has gone on since 1978, 79, from the Islamic Revolution. And sadly, no one has really done anything about that. So this is, excuse me, this is very frustrating for us in a time of war. And like I said, it's sending a message to our enemies. The main ammunition that is being held back are these big, I forgot the name of them, but they're about 1,200-pound massive bombs from, I think it's the B-52 bombers. And the Americans are afraid that we're going to use them in Gaza. So that's the main issue here. But, even as we're talking, even in the last few days, there have been shipments of supplies, of weapons that have been coming. And Benjamin Netanyahu, even though it's been coming, he still is putting that pressure on. And good for him to do that. And our defense minister, Yoav Gallant, he's in the United States right now. He's doing a little bit of that as well. So, yeah, there's politics, but there's also our survival at stake here. And that's why Benjamin Netanyahu, he cannot compromise right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we come back, I'll, as a person who dropped bombs for a living and this type of bomb, I'll go into that a little bit when we come back from the break here, to show why it's important that these supplies continue to flow to Israel. And we will be right back to More War Monday with Aaron Labarco from Israel right now. And we're updating it on the Israeli-Hamas Gaza war that's going on. I'll be right back after this message.
Experts say that Russian hackers found a way to hack our utilities, and the hackers may still be in there, waiting to strike.
Go after their power, go after their water, and you can bring a nation to its knees.
They're identifying targets, they're positioning malware so they could pull the trigger when they wanted to.
Experts see the intrusion as a possible precursor to an unprecedented Russian cyber attack that could, in the event of war, devastate the U.S.
We know that China has been hacking everything they can and stealing our intellectual property. They want to take down America's economy. They want to take down our morale. They understand that if they can destroy our economy, they can destroy our future. We're at war.
Minister of Defense Yoav Gallant, as the government itself, if I put the rhetoric aside, have had over the last 8.5 months, almost 9 months, a relatively clear-cut plan. That plan is both for the Gaza Strip, in that sense against Hamas, and looking towards Lebanon, towards Hezbollah and the developments there. And in that plan, what the IDF has been trying to do inside the Gaza Strip is to take it every single stage. There was high intensity, and after that there was what I'm going to call focused intensity in Khan Yunis, in Rafah, in the north again, and that is to destroy Hamas capabilities. And right now is the point where Israel is looking and saying, okay, we're ready for that day after, something that they had said. First, they wanted to take care of the military capabilities, and now we need both to be talking to the United States, to the other allies around, to see how the next day the Gaza Strip is not ruled by Hamas. It's not about making it disappear and the ideology disappearing, but they're not the ones who are going to get the capabilities to rebuild for the 2 million people the rest of their future there. But this is hand in hand with the need, and I say need, the diplomatic need to emphasize the relationship with the United States and with other allies when it comes to the challenge of Hezbollah. Because the uprising of tensions in the north, and again, from October 7th, Hezbollah has attacked every single day. But we need to be talking with the United States about what happens if Israel preempts, what happens when I say preempts. There's fighting there every single day. It's not exactly preemption. But if we choose to go out now and destroy much more of Hezbollah's capabilities, there's no question that Hezbollah will respond, that the other Shiite forces that Ariel had in that excellent article before that show all of these different capabilities. We'll all try to do it at once. And this is something that you need to be talking to your closest, most strategic ally, the United States. These are not threats against Israel. They are threats against the stability of the Middle East and through that of the entire world.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show on Worldview Tube and our X Spaces simulcast, and we're talking with Aaron LaMarco from Israel today. He's Worldview Tube's man on the ground, so to speak, over there. And Aaron, before the break, you were talking about the weapons shipments, and I wanted to just brief the audience up here that look, the weapons we're talking about are kits for what are ordinarily dumb bombs, and they're joint direct attack munition kits that strap onto dumb bombs and make them precision weapons. The reason why this war, in defense of its own survival that Israel is fighting, is the most accurate air warfare, especially since man has been fighting wars, and from the perspective of limiting civilian casualties, is the most effective at limiting civilian casualties is because of these precision-guided weapons. Two things will happen if Israel runs out of munitions like this. One, they'll have to use dumb bombs, which means their fighter aircraft and bomber aircraft will have to get closer to a target to continue to try to limit civilian casualties, which is what all Western professional militaries attempt to do. And two, there will be more civilian casualties because it's not perfect in these delivery methodologies. So there are more airmen at risk on Israel's side and more civilians at risk that are in these target areas that have to be struck in order for Israel to do its job and get its objective done, which I fully support. As a matter of fact, I think they should be calling for the unconditional surrender of Hamas. But it sounds like with these terms, Aaron, from intense warfare to a less intensive warfare operation, and then maybe a shift of focus to the north again, that things are slowing down in Gaza, especially in the Rafah area. But they're going to continue to be there and occupy that territory even after this intensity slows down. Is that correct? Am I right on getting that?
Yeah. Oh, that's a big topic. By the way, let me give you a fresh update. Literally 2 hours ago, a fresh update, breaking news from two different sources, that the Qatar government, who have been part of the negotiation process since October the 7th, they've tried to get in the middle and try to negotiate deals with the hostages and everything like that. I mean, how on earth they got involved, it's mystical, because they are a hotbed of terrorism. Be that as it may, the update is that they have been pressuring Hamas leaders, Yahya Sinwar and others, to get out of Gaza, that they will be smuggled out of Gaza. They will be taken to Iraq, where they will be cared for by the Iranians. So let me say that again. The Qatar government are pressuring the Hamas leaders, and this has been going on for a few weeks, according to the reports, to get out of the Gaza Strip, probably because they see the handwriting is on the wall with our forces that moved into Rafah, the last bastion point of the Gaza Strip, about 6 weeks ago. We came in to defeat the last 4 Hamas battalions. We've defeated 2 out of the 4. And according to reports, it's only a matter of weeks before we finish the job. So the Qatarians and the Iranians, who are the head of the octopus, they are saying, okay, get out of there. Now, this could mean, Colonel Rob, this to me sounds very much like this is the end of Hamas in the Gaza Strip. Now, if that happens, if and when that happens, it will happen, but if and when, that will mean 2 things. Number one is we will then be able to focus more on the north. The northern war is inevitable and it is imminent, and it's going to make the Gaza war look very minor league in comparison from what the the military reports that I've been reading and studying. Number one. Number two, as you talked about, the rulership of the Gaza Strip. And it is very clear for now, and probably for a number of years, and I've heard the figure 5 to 7 years at least, Israel will be in charge of the Gaza Strip with the goal of working with some kind of mediator, some other people. It could be some of the other moderate Muslim nations who are in peace treaty, the Abraham Peace Accords with Israel, but Israel will not let either Hamas or the Palestinian Authority rule in the Gaza Strip, because they not only are a threat to our security, but they educate the people of Gaza, the Palestinian people. They educate them to hate, to kill. It's a culture of death. It's a culture of deceit. So there's going to have to be a massive revamping, a reformation somewhat. And the last thing about that, just to report on, we have discovered in this war, and we've learned a lot in this war, but one of the key things we've discovered is approximately 300 miles of underground tunnels. You know, these billions of dollars that the Palestinian Authority that have been given by the United States, by the United Nations, by the EU, instead of building hospitals and schools, it's been purchasing weapons and building underground tunnels. And we've destroyed probably about 80 to 100 miles of those tunnels, and we are going to destroy the rest. However, it's estimated it's going to take maybe 2.5, 3 years to destroy these tunnels. So the day after in the Gaza Strip, it's nearby. It's nearby, and it looks like if this report, this update report that I just gave is correct, and I've seen it in 2 different sources, that Hamas leaders are getting out, they're fleeing to Iraq. This could be a kind of a de facto surrender, that they see the writing on the wall, and it will free up a lot of our soldiers to go up to the north, where the imminent war is about to happen.
That's incredible. That's great news if it turns out to be true, Aaron. Now, before Hamas took over politically, and I'm not sure Westerners really fully understand that Hamas is the government of Gaza. So when the Gaza Ministry of Health puts out casualty numbers, it's propaganda from Hamas. So they were the government. But before that, weren't there some moderate political parties in the Gaza Strip? And I use the term loosely. I know moderate, but still that didn't follow this path of what I call just barbarity and Nazism.
Yeah. So in 2006, really important piece of history to know, Israel pulled out every single Jewish person living there. There was approximately 7,000. They pulled them out. They left all of their agriculture, farms, homes. Some of those Jewish people destroyed their homes. They didn't want their homes going to the hands of our arch enemies. But be that as it may, we pulled out. We gave the Gaza Strip fully into the hands of the Palestinian Authority, and they were the government at the time. However, Hamas now, by the way, the Palestinian Authority, they are controlled by the military wing of the Palestinians, and they are called Fatah. They're more the military. They're more the political wing. But the military wing, Hamas, in a coup takeover, basically, they took over the government. And that happened almost within the first year of us pulling out. And so we all know what Hamas's ideology and belief is to hate and to wipe Israel off the map. But they were patient. And as I mentioned, they have been building underground tunnels. They have been stockpiling weapons. And don't think that October the 7th is when it began. It's been going on for years. Missiles, rockets, by the thousands. But of course, October 7th was the big, 4,000 strong army crossed over. 4,000 massacring 1,200. But something really important to bring out is this. Today, Hamas, who are the military wing, they are not accepted in the international community. They are outlawed as a terrorist organization. But here's the issue. They're not accepted in the international community, but in Gaza Strip, on the ground, they are accepted by the Palestinian public. And the opposite can be said about the Palestinian Authority, who are Fatah. They are accepted in the international world. They have a little bit of standing still around the world internationally. We've just seen it in the last few weeks. A number of nations are coming forward and saying, we are recognizing a Palestinian state. And that's mainly because of Fatah, the Palestinian Authority. But the flip side of that is they're not too well liked on the ground inside of the Gaza Strip. So you've got that tension. You've got the external, where Hamas are not accepted and the Palestinian Authority are, but inside of the Gaza Strip, the Palestinian Authority aren't really accepted on the ground, but Hamas, they are the ones that are. So Hamas, they've got to be smart, and they are. They've basically got no choice but to somehow work alongside the Palestinian Authority, which is very hard for them to do that because they want to be in control. But like I said a couple of times, this could be a big game changer if they are told to get out, the leaders are told to get out and flee to Iraq, where they'll be looked after by Iran. It reminds me in 1970 when Yasser Arafat, when he basically fled this region, and he fled to a place actually in South Lebanon. And that's where he found refuge, and that's actually where he started to fire into Israel from. So while the leaders of Hamas may be fleeing, they're not over. There's guarantee that they're going to be re-strategizing what they're going to do in the future.
Oh, I'm sure. If they're going to Iraq, they're going to end up in southern Lebanon, and that's what we're going to talk about after this break, because Nasrallah, as I mentioned in the opening, he said some strange and strong words just the other day in this video that came out. And we'll be right back on the Rob Maness Show. It's More War Monday with our man on the ground, Aaron LaMarco, in Israel. We'll be right back.
Hello, I'm Brandon House, and I want to tell you about Numi. This is a swish. You just take 2 capfuls, swish it around your mouth for 3 to 4 minutes, and you're absorbing, according to the studies, glutathione. Now, you don't need to take my word for it. There are over 162,000 studies on PubMed on the power of glutathione. It is a powerful molecule that studies show detoxes our cells. Some studies even show that, glutathione might remove mercury from our brains, help to prevent things like Alzheimer's, dementia, and Parkinson's. Now look, I'm not making claims. I'm just telling you what the research is showing about the powerful molecule glutathione. Numi is the product that contains glutathione. Melissa and I swish with this twice a day. We urge you to go to Neumi.com/house1. That's Neumi, Neumi.com/HOWSE and the numeral 1. Begin finding out about the power of glutathione while also supporting this broadcast network. Thank you.
As Iranian proxies continue to wreak havoc on stability in the Middle East, there are growing fears that this conflict could extend beyond its current parameters. These new tensions come as Hezbollah chief Hassan Nasrallah made waves following claims that the EU member states closest to Lebanon, Cyprus, could become involved in the war with Israel, which is now raging in tandem with the Gaza war.
Cyprus must be warned that opening Cypriot bases and airports to the Israelis to target Lebanon means that the Cypriot government has become part of the war, and the resistance will deal with it as if it is part of the war.
The threat by Nasrallah, who also threatened Israel with extensive precision strikes, leaves many Lebanese and Cypriots resigned to preparing for a possible escalation. This has divided opinions, especially in Lebanon.
Of course, we don't want to go into a war with them, but if that's solidarity with the people in Gaza, so be it.
For the first time, Syed Hassan Nasrallah expanded the scope against a European country. If he wasn't confident in himself, confident in what he is saying and has information, he wouldn't have said this.
While Cyprus has previously permitted Israel to conduct military air drills in its airports and bases, it has never been during a conflict.
It's a very annoying and worrying us.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's More War Monday here on Worldview Tube and our X Spaces simulcast. And our guest today is our Israeli reporter, Aaron Lavarco, who is on the ground in the country today. And we are talking about the latest update on the war in the Middle East. And Aaron, before we went to the break, we talked a couple of times about the southern Lebanon issue and Hezbollah, and that was some clips there of Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah, and he's threatening an EU country, Cyprus, which also has non-Israeli Air Force operations going on there. I don't know if there are any Israeli Defense Force Air Force operations going on Cyprus right now, but we've operated there for years. That would be a major shift if Hezbollah attacked the island of Cyprus at any of their airfields, as a matter of fact, especially if they target NATO aircraft and U.S. aircraft specifically, wouldn't it?
And by the way, Israel does have Air Force there. They use Cyprus's runways. So that's probably part of it, because, and that's why they threaten them in the first place, because Cyprus are hosting Israel. They're allowing Israel to fly and to launch from Cyprus off the Mediterranean coast. But to get an EU nation involved, you know, Nasrallah from Hezbollah, he's not stupid. He's very strategic. And you can guarantee he's got a plan or two up his sleeve, whether it's to stretch the American forces or to stretch the EU forces, or whether to get to start more of a third world war, to get Russia or to get the Iranians more involved. You can guarantee he's got a strategy there. And of course, just today, the Islamic leader of Iran made a threat by saying, if Israel starts to attack inside of Lebanon, we will get involved with the war. And, you know, that's another topic in itself. You know, I've been listening to the news here in Israel, listening to ex-generals, ex-colonels give their assessment, their political and military updates and thoughts. And a lot of them are saying, you know, it's way overdue. You know, the Iranian regime, they're actually not that strong. Right. They do not have the backing of the public. This is a big thing. And they're saying we should go for the head of the octopus. It's way overdue. It's just too bad there's not a very strong leader of the United States that shares the same sentiment, Colonel Rob.
Yeah, I think I know one, though, and we have a great opportunity to get him back in office here November 5th. And that's our one mission, folks. I'll say it right now. Our objective is to reelect Donald J. Trump, President of the United States, on November 5th. Don't forget it. because the world peace depends on it at this point. I don't think there's any other way out without this devolving into World War III, to be honest with you. But that's a whole other show. Well, we've got a live audience. We've got a couple hands up in the live audience, Aaron, and my host over there is Shell. Shell, who was first? I think we had a hand up before the break. Let's go with them.
We have Stealth Medical, sir. Stealth, what's your question for the Colonel and his guest?
Thanks so much. So according to the most recent ISW report, the Hamasniks, we call them, have been reconstituting and re-recruiting 18-year-olds for the last, I guess, a couple of weeks, and doing some type of reorganization. And that's typically because Israel hasn't been allowed to have more than 1 to 2 brigades at a time due to, American foreign policy pressure upon them. So when they are working in a region and they move out of that area, they're not leaving any troops there to stop kind of the reconstitution. So that has been occurring. Just curious regarding the recent report you had given that there was the potential that some of the leaders potentially are leaving. And we do know in Turkey, Hamas is operating. They have like their 5 top financiers, and they have also operations running out of there, including in Doha and Qatar.
Do you have a question for the Colonel and his
Yeah.
guest?
So I was curious, what has something changed in the last 48 hours regarding those reports that they're reconstituting and getting reinforcements in terms of Hamas volunteers from the population? Thanks.
Good question.
So yeah, I am aware of those reports. And look, this is not just Hamas recruiting young men, and of course, when these young men get killed, they're called children, but when they're fighting, it's accepted. That's what we're dealing with in the media. But no, they are recruiting. They like I said, the inside of the Gaza Strip, it is a culture of death and deceit. And it's not just inside of the Gaza Strip. In what's called the West Bank, we call it Judea and Samaria, they're doing the same by the thousands. I gave a report about 2 weeks ago that from Egypt, from Iran, from Iraq, thousands are actually trying to get in through Syria. Some have already made it through Syria. There's been reports of in the hundreds of trucks filled with these people that are lining up to fight, and they're smuggling into Syria, where they will make their way over to Lebanon. And we're talking about the Taliban as well. Iranians, Iraqis, Syrians, Qataris, all around. This is the neighborhood that we are living in. And, in the natural, we are in trouble. We are in trouble. We have these proxies of Iran. They're popping out of everywhere, and they're in mass numbers. So our military intelligence, along with other international military intelligence organizations, they're trying to keep tabs on all of this. But like I said, and I'll say it again, once we can deal with the Gaza Strip, and hopefully that will be very soon, then we can concentrate solely on the north. And today's the 24th. The actual countdown day is the 26th. That's in 2 days' time. Our Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu gave the leaders of Hezbollah until the 26th to move back the 20 miles from our northern border, which is in accordance with Resolution 1701. There's a river called the Litani River. All they have to do is go back beyond that. And if they don't, then we will launch an all-out war. And the two main reasons is not only is because Hezbollah are firing at us every day, and you may not know this, but as we're talking, our northern cities and towns, they're on fire. Thousands of acres of land has been burned. cities, towns have been burned. Kiryat Shmona, Metula, and about 80 to 100,000 residents have been misplaced or displaced since October the 7th. They want to go back home, but they're not going to go back home until that northern border is secure. So, yeah, these fighters are queuing up to fight against us, left, right, and center. That's why we need all of the manpower and weapons that we can get our hands on. And your prayers. Thank you.
Yeah, and they're also from UNRWA. And I think that's why you saw an airstrike just within the last 48 hours in the northern part of Gaza that had to target some of these folks because they are trying to reconstitute. But reporting that Aaron has talked about with the leadership of Hamas has just been released just in the last few hours, as a matter of fact. So there's a sequence of events there and a timeline piece that we have to look closer at to see what's, is it the chicken or the egg kind of thing. But Aaron, when we come back from our last break, I'm going to show a little clip about protesters being let off the hook here in the United States. But I want to talk about that, and I want to talk about Lebanon and the difference in the force laydown, in the makeup of the force that Hezbollah has at its disposal, and why it's so important as opposed to what was available to Hamas in Gaza. When we come back from this break on the Rob Maness Show, it's More War Monday, and we're talking the Israel operation with Aaron Labarco. We'll be right back.
We live in uncertain times. In fact, we live at a time when our own governments all over the world are warning us that there could be big problems with our power grid. World War III seems to be right on the horizon. Let me ask you this. Do you have a satellite phone? Should communications go down with cell towers? Do you have a satellite phone to get a hold of that college student or your spouse who travels, whatever it might be, to get a hold of your senior adult parents? We have satellite phones at worldviewtalk.com, and you get the satellite phone for free when you sign up for their very reasonable payment programs for the service. Sign up for the service with a reasonable contract, get the satellite phone for free. Worldviewtalk.com. You'll also find they have, well, what I now have, which is a solar generator. Yeah, I have a gas generator, an LP propane generator, but what if that goes down? I want to back up to my backup. So I now have a solar generator as well. You'll find them at worldviewtalk.com. Check it out today, worldviewtalk.com.
University earlier this year, most of the protesters who took over Hamilton Hall in April will no longer face criminal charges, and prosecutors say it all comes down to a lack of evidence despite the videos like the one you're seeing on your screen right there. Robert Moses with our Fox 5 New York team joining us now live with the latest on that decision. Good morning, Robert.
Josh, good morning to you. Unrest, as you well remember, pulsed through this campus for days, and the climax came whenever the NYPD moved in and arrested some of those protesters. Now, many of them no longer have cases pending against them. It is the most enduring image of the pro-Palestinian protests at Columbia University. The NYPD storming Hamilton Hall, which demonstrators occupied. Yesterday, the office of Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg dropped charges against 30 of the students and staff members who were arrested on April 30th and charged with trespassing, a misdemeanor. None of the 30 has a prior criminal history, and a prosecutor said that there simply is not enough evidence to prove that any one of the protesters damaged property or hurt anyone. The fact that protesters donned masks to obscure their identities and covered surveillance cameras made building cases difficult. The office is continuing to pursue cases from both campuses, a reference to Columbia and the City University of New York, including all assaults against police officers, Bragg's office said in a statement. There are ongoing school disciplinary proceedings for the students who had their case dismissed. Columbia declined to comment about the dismissed cases.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's More War Monday, and we're talking about Israel and the update on the Middle East war that's going on there. And we can't talk about this without bringing in the protesters here in America that are pro-Hamas Nazis. That's what they are. Hamas are Nazis. They act like Nazis. They look like Nazis. They talk like Nazis. And there are Americans in this country that are supporting those Nazis. As a matter of fact, we just had a mini crystal knock at a Los Angeles synagogue within the last 24 hours in broad daylight, where synagogue attendees were beaten in broad daylight, and not one person on the side of the Hamas Nazis that we know of was arrested and held for trial or charge. Well, we're talking with Aaron Labarco from Israel today about this update on the Middle East war that Israel finds itself fighting for its own survival on. And Aaron, before we went to the break, we were talking about Hezbollah and southern Lebanon, and just give the folks a feel for the size of the problem compared to the Hamas forces and their capabilities that Israel's been fighting for 8 months now, and it's still not quite finished compared to this threat in southern Lebanon from Hezbollah. It's pretty significant, isn't it?
Yeah, I'll tell you the three main significant differences is, number one, Hezbollah have a much larger military army, and it's a lot more organized, and it's a lot more regimented, and it's a lot more well-trained, number one. Number two, you've got the backing of the Iranians, which are right next door to them, and you've got the full funding of them. And of course, just like in the Gaza Strip, Hezbollah are going to be using civilian homes, civilians as human shields, of course, breaking all of the military rules and laws. But here's a new factor, Colonel Rob, that the public may not be aware of. Our Air Force here in Israel, we have an incredibly strong Air Force. Hezbollah don't really have an Air Force. However, now in this new generation, they have drones. And basically the drones, while they're not whether they have chemical weapons. We know the Syrians in the past, the Syrian regime, they have used chemical warfare. Who knows what they've got their hands on? So that's a new factor in this war. That's to some degree, Hezbollah have I wouldn't say air supremacy, but they have air capabilities with these drones, and they're causing havoc and they're causing terror. This is where we get the name terrorists from. They terrorize our people, our residents, so much so that, as I said, you know, up to 100,000 residents have been pulled out of their homes, and they want to go back home. But of course, they cannot and they will not until things are more quieted down. So, yeah, you've got mass number, you've got trained military, you've got air capabilities now, and not to mention the number of sophisticated missiles, cruise missiles. We saw a little bit of that in April when the Iranians fired on us 350 missiles, including cruise missiles. And, you know, I want to just remind the public about that because, you know, in the natural, and I said this before, I said, we're in trouble. We are in trouble. And in the natural, it's kind of reminds me of the story of Gideon, when Gideon had an army of 32,000 and the Midianite army were 186,000, about 23%. And in the story, God said to Gideon, Gideon, there are too many of you. And then his army dwindled down to 10,000. And then God said, Gideon, there are still too many. And when they got to 300 only, then what happened? They all had a jar. And inside of that jar was a candle. They were told to break the jar, a symbol of brokenness. And then that light shone. And the enemies, the Midianites, they saw that light, it confused them, and they ended up killing each other. So the point that I'm trying to make is, you know, what happened in April when these 350 missiles were fired on us, 99% of them were intercepted. I mean, to me, that is almost like a modern day, well, that is to me a modern day miracle. And it gives me some sense of hope, some sense of confidence that our unseen, invisible God is there, and he is with us. Now, the Americans have said that should the Hezbollah launch weapons on Israel, they've been saying for years that they've got up to 150 to 200,000 missiles. And in fact, a couple of weeks ago, one of their spokesmen, Colonel Rob, said, actually, we've been deceiving you. We have up to 1 million missiles. So just imagine if they fired on us 3, 4, 5,000 missiles every day. I don't think we have the Iron Dome or the Arrow defense missiles. The Americans said just the other day that will be very difficult to defend against. But Hezbollah are definitely a different beast. But we are not afraid. We cannot let fear get in. And as I said earlier, this is a battle for our survival.
Yeah, and that Air Force dimension now added to the 1 million potential missiles, and sure enough, they always try to deceive us, the Islamists and the Nazis. Your adversary is always in deception mode to try to throw you off, so you don't know what's coming. But it just adds a defensive, what we call a defensive counter-air dimension to the Israeli Air Force's challenge, which it really didn't have before to this extent, because when aircraft are launching out of air bases, we can see those, and the Israeli intelligence services can see those, and their air bases are limited. But with drones, oh no, you can launch them for just about anywhere. And when you mix that with all of these missiles and rockets and mortars and all of that capability in that such a small space, it's quite the challenge. Well, we've got one more question left, Aaron, from the audience before we end the show. I want to go ahead and take it. AJ, go ahead.
Hello, thank you, Colonel. Thank you for the mic. As you know, the country of Northern Cyprus has been subservient to Turkey since the 1970s. I don't see any particular reason why they wouldn't have elements that would act against Israel and Israeli interests in the rest of the country of Cyprus, given Erdogan's anti-Israeli stance. What is your opinion on that? Thank you.
I do not see Cyprus siding with Turkey in this. Cyprus and Israel have a very good relationship. We share military intelligence. We share economic trade, tourism, very warm relations along with Greece, along with Malta. I do not see Cyprus, who are historically are a Christian nation. I do not see them siding with Turkey unless they're bullied into doing that, in which case I would like to think that the EU nations would come and help Cyprus, along with Israel helping them as well.
And the United States, I would add. Well, Aaron, we've come much too quickly to the end of our time, my friend. Thank you so much for coming and talking to us and give us this really accurate and broad update on what's going on with the war and Israel's fight for survival. We wish you all well. We pray for everyone there every day that this will end and that peace will prevail. And above all, the state of Israel will have peace someday. Where can folks find you before I let you go?
They can find me at lighttothenationsministry.com. Lighttothenationsministry.com. And you've got my email on that. Colonel Rob, thank you so much for having me. It's been an honor. It's been fun. And I look forward to any time. I'm more than happy to come and help. And certainly look forward to meeting you in person late October, November.
Absolutely, my friend. Safe travels, and take care of yourself and your family while you're over there. And tomorrow, Joe Kent from Washington State Congressional District 3 candidate. He's back at it again because that Congresswoman, she's a Marxist. And we need an American like Joe and Special Forces veteran like Joe Kent in that office. And he'll be on the show for the entire hour tomorrow. Until then, I'm Rob Maness at Worldview Tube and X Spaces Simulcast.